To have you with us here as we talked about what's going on as far as the world of baseball is concerned. And the other issue you have to wonder about now as far as the sport is concerned, what you want to do here with the situation regarding the top 7 teams. Do you like the fact that there's a Super 7, or do you not like the fact there's a Super 7? I mean, that is something that you'd have to worry about and have to consider in the sport right now, whether you like the idea that we have 7 dominant teams and teams that are going to be, the Indians and the the Indians and, of course, the Nationals and the Yankees and the Red Sox and Houston and L.A. I mean, not all of them are big markets. I mean, Cleveland's not a big market. Houston historically has not been a huge market. So they're not all, New York, Boston is, of course. Chicago is, L.A. is. But they're not all huge markets. So you got to keep that in mind when you discuss these. But, I mean, the 7 teams, do you like the idea? Do you like the idea that you got the 7 ball clubs who are dominant in baseball? I mean, do you like that idea or not like the idea? I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people love it based on the idea that you are in a situation where, you're going to have the best teams at the end of the day in the big postseason scenario, and you'll be in a situation where, you're going to have great matchups when you get to the postseason because the Indians, the Astros, the Yankees, the Red Sox, and those are good teams. And then in the American League, National League, you get the Dodgers, Cubs, and the Nationals. So you got big teams, and a lot of people like that, and they should be all well over 90 wins and what have you. You can go that angle if you wish, or you can go the other angle where there's going to be a lot of games between the between the Rays and the A's that you have no interest in. Because that's a lot of bad baseball. I mean, that's a lot of bad baseball. And you can go with the angle, this too, where you play essentially 162 games for three spots. Because you're playing for 3 spots. You're playing for 2 wild card spots in the National League and a wild card spot in the American League. And they are now honoring Roy Halladay, only the second number to be retired, Alomar, and then now Halladay. Think about it. Halladay is going to be, and his mother, and his wife, and 2 kids are sitting there in Toronto today. Think about that for a second with the Blue Jays. Halladay is going to have I don't know what the Phillies have decided, but he is a player that could have his number retired in 2 different places. I mean, certainly a Blue Jays, he won a Cy Young, and he was great for them. And certainly he can have his number retired in a situation with the Phillies. How many guys can say number in 2 spots? Jimmy Fox, and Ruth. I mean, there's not many who have had that kind of career where they've made that kind of impact, Hall of Fame impact, on 2 different locales in 2 different leagues. And that is where you are right now as far as Halladay is concerned. Big day for him. All right, phone calls. Let's get to Tony in Dallas. And he says hello, and he's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Tony, good afternoon. How are you today, pal?
Christopher, 2 quick points. One on your top 7. You never gave credit to Minnesota for literally having 1 bad outing by their starting pitcher last year in that one game that they could have beaten the Yankees. I think Minnesota is going to be just as good. Maybe not make that one playing game, but they're going to be just as good. And I have to tell you, Chris, I think Milwaukee is going to make things for the Cubs difficult. I think St. Louis adding Holland, and I also think, remember, the Mets were atrocious last year, and the Mets are going to be better. So although I agree with you, it's probably going to end up being those 7, but I don't think it's going to be as atrocious baseball in a lot of ways that it was last year. But it was segue to my second point. You and I have now had this conversation for almost 4 years in a row, and that is, what the hell is Major League Baseball going to do with Tampa, which, if you look at the screen, there have been more fans that go to the spring training games of the Red Sox than go to opening day in Tampa. That's awful. And what is going on with Oakland? Those are 2 franchises that Major League Baseball seems that they've completely ignored. The legislature is not really helping. What is baseball going to do with those 2 markets?
Well, I don't think they have the answer for it yet because we don't know about the ballparks. Obviously, we don't have a ballpark situation settled in Oakland. We talked to Susan Slusher a couple of days ago about maybe the A's picking up the debt of the Oakland Coliseum area and then putting a new ballpark there. And obviously, we don't know exactly what's going on with Tampa with their effort to build a new stadium in Ybor City. So, but those are two horrendous markets. It's been this way for a long time. Very, very difficult to figure out. Very difficult. I don't have the answer for you. I think there should be a team in Montreal. If Montreal puts together a franchise or a ballpark that's 38,000, they put it outdoors with a roof. I think Montreal can be successful again. I really do. I know Montreal went through that long period there where nobody cared. They had a bad team, small market, that bad stadium, and the 94 strike killed them. Got to put yourself in a situation in that city. You build a park in the right area. You got a chance to salvage baseball in that town. Now, that's a chance. Let's see if they can put that together. Here's Ernie in Pittsburgh, and he's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Ernie, good afternoon. How are you today?
Hey, Dog, two things. First of all, the Pirates are going to be a surprise this year in the Central. They're going to be better than the Cardinals and the Brewers with bust-out players like Polanco, Bell, good young pitchers like Tyon Williams, Chad Cole, Joe Musgrove. I think the Pirates are going to have a better year than both of them teams. But to your point on thinking that baseball is being dominant by 7 teams, baseball's had the most parity of any league the last 5 years.
Well, if you look at it from a championship, who wins the World Series? You got five different teams, but you got to look at it from a standpoint of playoffs. Not so much the championship. You got to look at the Dodgers have been in the playoffs every year. Cubs have made the playoffs 3 straight years. Nationals, who have a lot of money, been in the playoffs 4 or 5 straight years. You got to look at it from a playoff perspective more so than a standpoint of a World Series champion, because once you get in the postseason, anything can happen. The problem is the same teams make the playoffs every year. That's the problem. Go ahead.
There's been a lot of turnover in the playoffs the last 5 years in baseball. Well, new teams. The last 5 years has been new teams.
Well, okay, the Dodgers have made the playoffs how many years in a row out of the NL West? The Cubs have been to 3 straight NLCSs. Washington has won the division 4 or 5 straight times. 4 or 5 times in the last 6 years. They made they won a division. The Red Sox are in the. Go ahead, you first.
Yeah, in the last 5 years, the Pirates made it 3 times. The Reds made it once. You had last year. You had the Twins in there. You had who won? The Royals have been in there a couple times. Kansas City. You had the Mets in there a couple times. I mean, there's been a lot of turnover in baseball in the playoffs.
Well, the Mets but the Mets are a big team, though. I mean, the Mets are a New York. They're a New York team. I understand what you're saying. You had the Rockies make it. You had the Twins make it. The Pirates had a little run. The Reds for a little while were a decent team. But normally, but the bottom line is simply this. The big markets with the money and the big local TV contracts have an advantage. They always have, and they always will. Right now, that's the Cubs. They finally straightened out their front office with Theo. That's L.A. That's New York. That's Boston. Those to a certain degree, the Nationals. There's still a little bit of a have-not scenario in baseball that I'm not sure how they're going to correct. Now, you're right. The Rockies, Arizona made it, something different. Minnesota made it 1 game. They didn't win a divisional series. They didn't play in a divisional series. The Rockies and Twins didn't. 1 game. But I understand what you're saying. Still an issue, though, from a parity standpoint. There is still an issue. We take time out and we continue at 10 in front of the hour here on Mad Dog Unleashed.